Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 7th of March. So coming to the first article, making the neighborhood first again. Now as obvious, the context is the neighborhood first policy of India. Now before we come into the issues that are important, some background is what is vital. First and foremost, you should know about this policy neighborhood first. This was a policy which has been mooted in the year 2014 by the Prime Minister Modi himself. Now what had happened is that in the year 2014, the new government headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi came to power. And after its coming to power, Prime Minister Modi invited all the heads of the SAARC countries for his swearing in ceremony. And this was what was known as the neighborhood first policy. But it is this policy which has been a failure, and as a result of which it is now being analyzed that should this policy be rebooted, a new form of neighborhood first policy is what is needed. So that is something that you need to know in the background. Another thing that you need to know is something about SAARC itself. Now SAARC is basically a regional organization. This is an intergovernmental organization. It is a union of the South Asian nations, and it includes 8 countries, that is Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka and Maldives. This is something you should know because SAARC is going to be very, very important this year. SAARC was formed on the 8th of December in the year 1985. So that is some fact about SAARC. Another thing that you should know about SAARC is that SAARC comprises of approximately 3% of the world area, and approximately in this 3% world area, it is 21% of the world population. So it is one of the most populous areas in the entire world, and it contributes to about 3.8% of the world economy. So from these figures, you can well analyze that this is not a developed area. There is a high incidence of poverty in this area. The development is very less as compared to the area and the population. So that is something that is important with regards to now the SAARC. Now coming to the issues which have been discussed in the editorial. The first issue is with regards to the South Asian Connect. Now the editorial discusses that at present the South Asian Connect is the weakest since ever in the past, especially with regards to India and its neighbors. India has almost a down spiraling of relationship with almost all the SAARC countries, and that is something that is a cause of concern which has been highlighted in this editorial. Another thing which has been analyzed is with regards to the political headwinds which are being seen in the entire South Asian region. For example, Afghanistan, we had studied, it is facing the longest war in history. The governance is completely disrupted. So that is the cause of political headwind in Afghanistan. Also, Afghanistan will be facing elections next year. Now coming to Bangladesh, we also know that how the opposition party in Bangladesh has been accused, and as a result of which the viability of democracy within Bangladesh is also questionable at this point of time. So there are political headwinds in Bangladesh also. Bhutan is also going to have elections next year, though at present India has stable relationship with Bhutan. Nepal has just concluded its election, and the new government is a government which is not having a very warm relations with India. So that is the concern with regards to Nepal. Coming to Pakistan, this is the election year for Pakistan, and with Pakistan the relations are almost at the lowest ever. So that is something that is important. In Sri Lanka also we had studied that the coalition government in Sri Lanka is facing challenges, and there is a fear that a newer government might come under the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and this is something that is not to the interest of India. The political and constitutional crisis which has emerged in Maldives is nothing new. We all know about this. So definitely there are political headwinds in Maldives also. So that is what has been analyzed in this part of the editorial. Next is the issue of China's unprecedented forays in this region. Now here you need to understand that infrastructure and dollar diplomacy is something that China was following for long. So that is not something new. What is new is that China in the past used to never interfere in the internal politics of these countries, of the South Asian countries. And now, differing from that position, China has started directly meddling in the internal affairs of these countries, and this is what is a cause of concern for India. Another thing is that China is now having military bases in majority of the South Asian countries, and as a result of this, India is feeling threatened and India is feeling cornered. So that is one cause of concern. Now some examples under this particular issue is what is important. For example, China had mediated the negotiations between Bangladesh and Myanmar regarding the Rohingya refugee return agreement, and this is one important interference which China has done between Bangladesh and Myanmar. Another thing is that it hosted a meeting between Afghanistan and Pakistan Also, recently we have seen that in Maldives, China has been trying to broker a deal between the government and the opposition. So these are some examples which are showing that how China is now meddling in the internal political affairs of South Asian countries, and that is what has been analyzed in this editorial. Another thing which has been analyzed is the hard power politics by India. Now, you should know that traditionally India is known for not being a hard power, but recently we are seeing that India has adopted a hard power politics, especially in the South Asian region, and it is this that is being criticized to have a boomerang effect in this region. For example, the surgical strikes that India has been conducting in Pakistan. You should also know that India had in the past, in the year 2015, India conducted a surgical strike in Myanmar also. And this was something that was followed by political chest thumping, and this led to a down spiraling of relation with Myanmar also. So this is one issue that you should know, that such kind of surgical strikes is a reflection of the hard power politics that India is now following. Also, what is important here is that in the year 2015, India had imposed an economic blockade on Nepal, and this was again a demonstration of the hard power politics by India. Recently, we are also seeing that the army chief, we had also discussed in one editorial that the army chief had made some statements where he had said that all the refugees who are entering India from Bangladesh were basically coming to India primarily because of insinuations from Pakistan as well as China. And this is something that has not gone down well with all the three countries, that is Bangladesh, Pakistan and China. And this is again a reflection of the hard power politics that India is playing. Another thing is that in Maldives also we are seeing that India has openly warned the government in Maldives to cancel the emergency which they have imposed. So all of this is but a reflection of the hard power politics that India is following in this particular region, and it is this that has led to further irritants between India and its neighboring countries. So that is something that has been analyzed. Another thing which is important is with regards to the soft power of India. Now, basically, there are two countries with which soft power of India has been very much demonstrable. First is Afghanistan and second is Bhutan. And what we are seeing is that in the long run, it is these two neighbors with which India has a stable relationship. So this itself proves that soft power is much more successful than the hard power. And so a case is being drawn that India should leverage more of its soft power vis-a-vis the hard power. India has a shared history and a common culture with the entire South Asian countries, and it is this aspect which India should focus on rather than such hard politics. So that is something that is important. Another important analysis which has been given in the editorial is with regards to a three-pronged strategy for China. Now, the editorial discusses that India needs to follow a three-pronged strategy to curb the rise of China. The first aspect is collaboration with China. We had even yesterday discussed an article that India should become a part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. This again has been reiterated in this editorial. Here the author is saying that India should become a part of the Belt and Road Initiative on similar lines as India is already a part of the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar corridor. So similarly, India should become a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. So that is one aspect, that is one strategy. The second strategy is that in areas where India's core interests are challenged and India cannot align with China, in those areas India should come up with alternative mechanisms, some alternative infrastructure projects with Quad. So this is again something that is important, that the Quad infrastructure should also be used as a strategy. And another thing is that India should focus on strengthening the entire South Asia for a sustainable development of this region to counter the rise of China and ensure rebalancing of power. So this is what is the three-pronged strategy against China, and this is an important analysis indeed. Another aspect which has been analyzed is with regards to the ASEAN. Now here you need to understand that ASEAN is a very successful organization compared to SAARC, which is almost now dead. So that is something that has been analyzed in this editorial, that how can the SAARC be modeled on similar lines to ASEAN. Now what has been advocated here is that the ASEAN leaders often meet each other informally also, and this is something that should be encouraged even for the SAARC leaders. Another thing that is stark about the ASEAN is that the leaders do not interfere in the internal matters of the countries. And if in SAARC also this model is replicated, that each country remains to its own and does not meddle in the internal politics of other countries, then SAARC can also become successful. Another idea which has been given is that Indonesia's example is what has been given, that Indonesia is the biggest economy in ASEAN, but Indonesia in ASEAN took a back seat and it let smaller countries like Singapore lead ASEAN. And this is what India should also do. Since India is the biggest economy in SAARC, India should take a back seat and India should allow smaller countries to take a front role in SAARC. This will assuage the fears of other smaller countries in SAARC, and it will help it will help in a confidence building measure, and it will help in the entire region growing and developing. So that is what has been analyzed here. Indeed, these points are very, very important. These are some new points which have been added. For example, the ASEAN and three-pronged strategy, the hard power versus soft power analysis. So this is something that is new to this editorial, and indeed I've told you the neighborhood policy is going to be very, very important for this year. So that is the relevance. Coming to the next article, it is time to have a debate on proportional representation. Now, basically, this is an interview, and this is an interview of the former election commissioner, Mr. S.Y. Qureshi, and this is a very, very important interview. We have a lot to extract from this particular interview, so that is why I have included it. The context can be the electoral reforms in India, which are much warranted. Now, coming to the analysis, the first issue is with regards to electoral bonds. Now, a large part of this I have already discussed in our previous videos on funding of political parties. So, for some deep analysis of this issue, please go and watch that video. However, coming to this particular issue, the electoral bond scheme is what the election commissioner has also criticized, as I had discussed before also, that previously when the scheme was not implemented, there was a norm that up to rupees 20,000 donations could be made to a political party anonymously. And whenever a donation is going to be made above 20,000 rupees, then it has to be reported to the Election Commission of India. Now what the government has done is that it has reduced this limit to 2,000 rupees. It has said that any donation can be made to a political party through cash with rupees 2,000 only. And if a cash donation is to be made above 2,000 rupees, then in that case, an electoral bond is what is required. Now, what is the criticism to electoral bond is that you can go and buy even an electoral bond to the cost of rupees 50,000 and you will not have to divulge your identity to the Election Commission of India. So this, instead of bringing transparency, has brought about more opacity in the system, and that is what the former election commissioner has also criticized. So that is one analysis. Another thing is with regards to the lack of anonymity. Now here, as I have already told you, that there is a lack of anonymity because of this electoral bond scheme. Another issue which is important here is that it is only the banks who will come to know that who has made this donation. And this safeguard is something that is not implemented with the banks. It is the government which is going to control majority of these banks, because these banks are public sector banks. So what the government can do is that the government can get an information from these banks as to who are the companies and what is the amount of donations that they have made to which particular party. So this is a cause of concern. So this is something that has been highlighted even by the former election commissioner, where he says that this issue of anonymity has become very complex today with the present scheme. So that is something that is important. Another thing is with regards to the removal of 7.5% cap. Now, I had discussed previously also that there was a finance bill 2017, and in this bill, the government had done away with the 7.5% cap. Now, what was this cap? Under this previous norm, any corporate or any private company that wanted to make a donation to a political party could make a maximum donation of 7.5% of the profits of the past 3 years. So there was a limit to the donation which a political party could get from one particular company. This is something that this bill has done away with, and now there is no limit on donations to political parties by a private company. So the commissioner here is saying that this is something that is going to result in a scenario where a company might just exist to run India's political parties, and this is going to give rise to more degree of crony capitalism, and this is something that is the death knell of an independent election system and independent democracy. So that is something that has been highlighted. Even we had criticized this issue at that point of time. So this is something that is important. Another thing is with regards to National Electoral Fund. Now, this is a new idea that has been given. Now, first and foremost, you need to understand that there are only two solutions to this. One is the state funding of elections. That has been time and again mooted. But here the election commissioner has come up with a new idea. He has said that if anonymity is to also be maintained and state funding is not to be done, then in that case, a national electoral fund is what should be set up. And all private companies should make donations to this fund, and as a result of which these donations will be anonymous, and the Election Commission of India should disburse the money from this fund to the political parties depending upon the achievement of a political party. For example, a political party, the criteria that the commissioner has given is, he has said that for every one vote that a political party gets, he should be allocated a sum of ₹100, and this will be a very transparent system. So a political party that is getting more votes is going to get more fund. So that is the scenario that is the functioning of the National Electoral Fund. This is an idea which you can use as a suggestion for reforming electoral politics, or for that matter, you can for reforming the political party funding. So that is where the relevance of this idea is going to come. So that is something, that is the analysis here. Another thing is with regards to simultaneous elections. Now this is something that the election commissioner has also discussed. He has said that there are some advantages and disadvantages of simultaneous elections. Now, both is what we are going to analyze. In the advantages, what has been highlighted is that if it is elections, that is the fountainhead of corruption. Then when there are perennial elections in the country, that means there is perennial corruption in the country. So if one wants to end this perennial corruption, what is important is that elections are also curbed. So as a result of which, if elections are held only once, or for that matter twice in a particular 5-year tenure, then definitely corruption is going to get checked. So that is one positive of having simultaneous election. Another positive is that at present we are seeing that elections often result in communalism. They result in hate speeches, and all of this is something that is happening time and again. And if elections are held once, then this issue is also something that can be checked. So those are two advantages of simultaneous elections which have been highlighted here. Now coming to the negatives. The first negative is that definitely it will result in the weakening of the regional parties and the regional issues, which can get stamped by national issues and powerful national parties. Another thing is that if a government falls, especially because this is a coalition era, what might happen is that a government might not be able to complete its 5-year tenure either in the center or for that matter in the state. Then in such a scenario, what is going to be the fate of simultaneous elections? So that is one technical issue which is a common criticism to simultaneous elections. Another important analysis that the commissioner has given is that he has said that whenever elections take place, it is a type of empowerment of the voter. Now, when elections are taking place simultaneously, then the voter feels empowered for a long period of time, and he feels empowered many times in a 5-year tenure. This is something that is going to get defeated if elections are held only once in 5 years. So this is one analysis, this is one criticism what has been given by the election commissioner. So these are some points which are important. Another very important analysis is with regards to the first past the post system versus a proportional representation. Now you need to understand what is first past the post system. I'm sure you have some basics about it. First past to post system is a majority vote system. This means that if a person gets maximum number of votes, he shall be elected. And it will not depend upon the fact that how many people have actually voted for him. For example, if a person gets only 11% of the votes and the remaining 89% of the votes is what is distributed amongst all the parties, and it is these 11% of the votes which constitute the maximum votes, then this person is going to win the election despite the fact that 89% of the people have not voted for him. So this is what is the first past the post system. But this is a system which India has adopted primarily because this is a very easy system. That was the idea. A proportional representation rather means that if a person has got 11% of the votes, then on the proportion of the votes that he has got, he shall be elected. So this is something that has been advocated now. An example is what is vital. Now here you need to understand that in the 2014 election, the BSP party had got approximately 20% of the votes, and this was the third highest vote share. However, this party won 0 seats in the Lok Sabha. So this party has not been represented despite the fact that this party got 20% of the votes. And this is what the commissioner has highlighted. He has said that a German model is what India should adopt. Now, what is the German model? For understanding purposes, please just imagine that suppose the seats in the Lok Sabha are 500. This is just a supposing of the seats. Now, out of these 500 seats, suppose 300 seats are to be elected through the first past the post system. As they are done, there will be 300 constituencies, and from those 300 constituencies, elections will be held. The remaining 200 seats, suppose, are to be filled through a proportional representation. So what will happen is that when a person will go to vote, he will also vote for his party. For example, if in this case it was the BSP which had got 20% of the votes, then in these 200 seats, BSP would have had 20% of the seats of these 200. So as a result of which, in the Lok Sabha, in that scenario, BSP would have had a representation, and this is an ideal model because this is a model which will ensure greater representation within the parliament. So this is the model which has been advocated by the commissioner. So that is something that is important here. Another analysis is with regards to the electoral election voting machine. Now, what you need to know about the EVMs is that the EVMs have time and again been criticized. It is said that they often make mistakes, but for this the commissioner has justified that this is something that is a false accusation on the EVMs, and rather EVMs are now going to follow the verifiable voter paper audit trail, the VVPATs, and these VVPATs will be 100% now. So this is something that is important, that the Election Commission of India has assured in the Supreme Court that the VVPATs will be 100%, and so no chance of a mistake by the electronic voting machine is something that can be concluded here. So that is something that is important. Now, another thing which is important here is with regards to the appointment of the election commissioners. Again, this is a very important analysis. Now, here you need to know that the Election Commissioner of India is appointed by the government. He is not appointed through a collegium, and his appointment does not require any consultation with the opposition leader. This is contrary to the appointment of the CVC, or for that matter the Chief Information Commissioner. For both these appointments, a collegium is what is formed, which comprises of the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition. So here the Commissioner is highlighting that when these bodies, being only statutory, have a collegium system for appointment, then why not the Election Commissioner of India, when the Election Commissioner is a constitutional post? So that is something that is very important. A reform is indeed vital in this direction, that the manner of appointment of the Election Commissioner in India is reformed. So that is what is important here. Indeed, the issue of electoral reforms is going to be very, very important for the year 2018, because 2019 is the election year. So it will be in the year 2018 that this issue of electoral reforms and election preparation is going to be very, very important. So that is the relevance of this article. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this is a small column article. There are only two aspects which are important here. Now, what is the gist is, first and foremost, you need to understand that what we are seeing is that now the entire stock markets are on a downslide. The prices in the stock markets are falling, despite the fact that last year they have seen several surges. Now, the two important analyses is, first with regards to the economic survey. You need to know that the economic survey had warned that this kind of a correction is something that will come in the stock markets, and that is what we are exactly seeing now. Another analysis is that the stocks that had risen in the past were not a replication of the economy in India. Here you need to understand that the economy in India was going on a downslide. This was largely because of some reforms that had happened. For example, the GST was introduced, demonetization which took place. So because of this, the economic growth was somehow slowed. However, if economic growth was slowed, then this should have reflected in the markets, but this did not happen. So maybe this downslide in the stock markets that is happening now is a reflection of the past slow growth in the economy. So that is something that you need to know. Another cause could be the bank scams, because in the backdrop of these scams in India's public sector banks, what is feared is that the loans might get expensive, as a result of which economic growth might further slow down. So it might be a reflection of that. So that is something that is important with regards to this particular article. Now, based on today's discussions, please try and attempt these questions within a word limit of 150 words. With this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow.